I guess the first question I have is about your uncle. You've said in a poem and in a preface and also in conversation that the only story that has come directly to you, or indirectly maybe, about the Holocaust in your family is the uncle who was lost, who found out about his family killed, I think, at Treblinka, and drank a bunch of vodka and blew his brains out. There were obviously others who were lost. When you got to Treblinka, it wasn't something it wasn't a roots visit. It was something that happened along the way because you were already in Germany. You decided to make the trip to Poland and you went to Treblinka. But there you said that the poems you heard at Treblinka were the clearest message you've ever gotten about why you write poetry. Can you explain that a little more? And specifically, what do you mean you heard the poems at Treblinka?
Oh, it wasn't as if a voice was speaking to me, and and
glad we cleared that up.
Delivering
Jerry
the poems there, but it was as if that experience, plus more. I don't know that I began. I don't know that I began to write those poems following the Treblinka visit, which was early in the trip, or later when, having passed some time in Krakow in Silesia, we then traveled to Auschwitz. But the whole thing, it was from the moment that I set foot into Poland, I had a great sense of upset. Something. It triggered something. I think quite understandably.
Right.
And
but the clearest message you've ever gotten about why you write poetry.
The clearest message, in the sense that. I think for many of us, maybe most of us, who became poets and who had lived either directly or vicariously through the experience of the Second World War, the Holocaust, the great, very intense, brief period of destruction. I mean, a few years, and I've always tried to get an accurate count of how many people were killed during that time from 1939 to 1945. Extraordinary number of deaths, of burnings, of maimings, I think I began to write poetry under the impact of that. I was still living under as were others of my generation. It's not. I don't think I can define very clearly what I mean. It's just that I understood then, for the first time, I was willing to say, that something of what had happened there, was what brought me into poetry in the first place, and and I've been meditating too, or thinking about the statement of Adorno, or attributed and sometimes mistranslated from Adorno about not writing poetry after Auschwitz,
right?
And then I said, but that's wrong, because really what drove me into poetry was. Or what I feel retrospectively drove me into poetry was the experience of Holocaust, and not just what happened in the death camps, although that was extremity, but the other, and particularly as one got away from the war itself, what happened at Hiroshima began to sink in for us. I was a kid when we got news about that, and I don't think there was, for me, at the age of 14, a sense of the horror of Hiroshima, but then it didn't take long before one realized what we had done there, and and then of course things like Dresden only came to light for us much later. So a horrible.
And you don't really disagree with the what we imagine to be the impetus behind Adorno's statement, which is that poetry after Auschwitz would be barbaric. That is to say, you believe that the enormity of that situation robbed language of its capacity to express appropriately what had happened. The disagreement is what happens afterwards, because you believe strongly, and you've said this in Corbin, you said it at the end of The Burning Babe, I believe, and you've certainly said it in various statements, that poetry is all we have left.
Well, I think that, the transformations that poetry makes possible, were, to me, a more meaningful response than to, than silence. Although silence can be very powerful, but who will know about it?
Well, there are some artists who would argue differently about silence.
Yeah, but you have to get somebody has to get the word out that. No, anyway, silence was not an option.
Silence is not an option for you.
Me, and
yeah.
and I think simply withdrawing. I mean, silence means withdrawing from the world.
Right. In the Elie Wiesel sense of if you're silent, you're helping the bad guys. Don't be silent. In that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the Elie Wiesel sense. I mean,
well, I know that. I threw that in. I threw that in to get a rise out of you. Yes, right.
It is generally assumed that if if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Yes,
this
right.
is stated in many different ways. But so as a poet, I began more and more to talk about the response to that mid-century Holocaust, or Holocausts, and to so much that followed.
Yeah.
The response being through the transformed language of poetry, and of course other responses also.
What's so